Okay, great. I hope you should be able to see my screen. Okay, excellent. So let me quickly summarize what we have done so far and what is the agenda for today. So we are in this journey where we are looking at the different uh, uh, basic concepts and tools that we will use for a data science journey. Okay, and within data science, we discussed earlier that we'll be looking at Python as our primary language of choice to implement our data science programs. And within Python, we have already seen operators and control structures. Now we are looking at the different data types that are available with Python. So among these different data types, we have looked how to use strings. We have looked how to look at lists, and now we have also in the last class we also looked at tuples. Today we look at the next data type as sets. Okay, so not wasting time and directly entering into the material, we can say that sets are unordered list of elements identified by curly braces. So first thing, it is an unordered list. If you remember, when we talked about lists and tuples, they are ordered elements, whereas sets are unordered elements. So when we say unordered, it means when we create a set, the order in which we put them may not be the actual order in which it will be represented. Okay, the order may be actually different than the original one. Hence, it is called as unordered list. Okay, we define sets by using curly braces. Okay, so you look at this example here. When I say x is equal to x is a set, and I define it within curly braces. So these curly braces explains to us that this is a set, and within the curly braces we separate our items using a comma. In this case, I'm using strings as the elements. So there are three names: Swapnil, Vishal, and Pranay, which becomes part or three elements of our set. We see when we print the value of x here, we see that it prints Pranay, Swapnil, and Vishal. So as I said earlier, the order is not what is stored when we create a set. It can be of any order. Further, it is mutable like list. So when we say mutable, it means that you can update values, you can add values, we can remove values, and so on. Okay, that is what we mean by it is mutable like list. It can only contain unique elements. Lists can contain duplicate elements, whereas sets can only contain unique elements. So let's look at an example here. Here we are creating a set called a C set is equal to, and we are adding these three items into it, 11, 22, and 11. And if you observe, 11 we have duplicated multiple times. But when we look at C set inside, we see that it has only two elements, 11 and 22. Okay, so duplicate elements are not allowed. In fact, what sets will do is it will automatically keep only the unique elements within the set. Okay, the duplicates are eliminated in the set. Additionally, sets do not support indexing. So here when I write C set 1, I cannot access the first element. Okay, the logical reason for that is, as I said, it is an unordered list. It means that the order 1, 2, 3 does not make sense to sets. When we try to access sets by let me access the first element, it gives us a type error saying that the set object does not support indexing. Okay, let me go ahead. So let's see how to create sets. So to create an empty set, I can start with saying that S1 is equal to set, and set is a function with open and close parentheses, saying that this is the function and this function is creating a new variable called as set. When I print S1, I can see that it prints to me the value here, set. Additionally, I can add values into the set by doing this way. So what I'm doing is to the set function, I'm adding an argument whose type is tuple. So we are adding a tuple of three elements, 2, 3, and 4. And we see that S2 here is a set. How do we know it's a set? Because it starts with the curly brace, ends with the curly brace, and within this, it is separated using commas. So these three items becomes part of a set, okay? 2, 3, and 4. I can print the type of S2 and I can verify that it's a set. To delete the values, so to clear values within the set, I can use S2.clear, and that will delete each and every element available within the set. So 2, 3, and 4, we can get rid of them by doing s2.clear. Let's see how we can add additional elements. So here we are starting with list S1, and to create a set, we are using curly braces 2, 3, 4. So now we have seen two ways of doing the same thing. Okay, two ways of creating a set. This is the first way, and this is the second way. Okay, just 1 second. Okay, so this is another way of creating the set with 3 elements, 2, 3, and 4. We can do an add object. So s1.add20 will add the element into the set. Okay, so we can see 20 gets added into the set. Where it gets added, we have no control. It may get added in the front, between, or in the end. As I said, unordered lists means we do not know how to do this. Okay, we do not know where it will be added, but it will be added within the part of the set. Going ahead, when we write s1.add 30, 40 with the agenda of adding 2 elements, we get a type error saying that add takes exactly 1 argument. We have given 2 inputs, but it takes exactly 1 argument. So this is not allowed, or it gives us an error. If I want to add multiple items, I can use the update method. And in the update method, I can pass it as a tuple. And the number of elements of this tuple can add this value inside. So we can add 2 elements, 20 and 30, into S1 by writing the update function. Okay, so we get 2, 3, 4, 20, and 30. Okay, let's look at how we can delete items. So to delete items from the set, there are 3 methods: discard, remove, and pop. Okay, so let's look at how it works out. We start with S1 as a set with 3 values, 2, 3, and 4. When we print S1, we can see that the 3 values gets printed here. To remove an item, so let's say you want to remove this value 2, we can use the s1.discard function. s1.discard2 deletes for us the value 2. So remember this, these value that we are putting is the value you want to delete. We cannot put the what is it, the index location. The reason we cannot put the index location is sets are unordered lists, so there is no index location as such. When we put discard value, it will take the value 2 and discard it out of this list. Okay. Now when you print S1, we can see that it is giving us 3 and 4, the value 2 has been discarded. Further, when we try to discard 20, it does not give us an error. Okay, so discard is a method which works without error. That is, if the item exists in the list, in the set, it will remove it. Otherwise, it will not remove it. Okay, but it will not give you an error nonetheless. Another way of doing things is using the remove function. The remove function works exactly like the discard function, with the difference that if the item does not exist, the remove function will give us an error. Okay. In this case, when we try to remove 20, it gives us an error, that key error 20. That means that this value does not exist inside the set, so it cannot remove it. And finally, we look at the pop method. Using the pop method, what we can do is when we say s1.pop, one of the items will get popped out. Okay, which item we are not sure and we cannot comment, but one of the items will get popped out. Okay. Now, since we know some part of sets, let me ask you a very simple program like this. Okay, so WAP, which is write a program to remove the duplicates from the given list. I have a given list with these values: 23, 33, 33, 23, 45, 67, 56, 67, 45. And the task is we want to remove the duplicates of these items. Can you tell me in the chat what program should we write to get this? Okay. That's it. Only one person will answer. Okay. Okay, great. So your answers are right. We have this variable L. We can just write set of L, and this will return to us the unique elements of this item. Okay, great. Let me go ahead. So sets, the primary reason we use sets is also to do Boolean operators. Okay, so I hope in your study sometime you may have seen diagrams like this. Do you know what these kinds of diagrams are called? Venn diagrams. Excellent. So these are basically Venn diagrams. And the reason we use Venn diagrams is to work with sets. So these sets is not something that you may not have heard the first time. It is actually a very well-known mathematical concept, okay, where we use sets of objects to do unions, to do intersection, to do symmetric differences, and so on. In this case, I'm showing you two examples, A set and B set. A set represents this circle A, B set represents this circle B. Okay, the A set has three values, 11, 22, and 33, and B set has three values, 12, 23, and 33. Once we have these sets, we can do very interesting things with these sets. So let's say our task is, I want to find the union of these two sets. So when I say union of these two sets, it means I want to find what are all the elements combined in both the sets. Okay. So sets definitely does not have duplicates, and all the combined elements of A and B can be found by doing this operation. We're writing print A set pipe B set. So this is the pipe operator. You can get this pipe operator in on your keyboard. If you look at the slash command, the backslash, above that we will have the pipe operator. Okay. So when you have to access this pipe, you have to do shift and backslash. You will get the pipe operator. You may have also, if you have coming from a background in C, you would also know that this pipe operator, a single operator like this, is actually a Boolean OR operator. Okay, so it's a Boolean OR operator. If we use this operator, the Boolean OR, we can say A set or Boolean or B set, it gives us this value. Okay, so it gives us the union of all the elements together. Okay, another way of doing that, if I don't want to use this operator, another way of doing that is I can use one of these sets, either A set or B set, call the dot union function along with B set. So when I say A set dot union B set, it gives me the same result as this would give us. Okay, so that is how we can find the intersection of two sets. If I'm interested to find out, the union of two sets. If I'm interested to find out the intersection of two sets, intersection means what is the common element. So when I take the three elements here, 11, 22, 33, and for the B set 12, 30, 23, 33, we can see 33 is the common element here. And if I'm interested to find out this common element, I can do intersection. To do intersection within Python, I use this operator. Do you know what is this operator called? Okay, in colloquial language we call it AND, but more technically it is called as ampersand. Okay, so it's written like this. Okay, within programmers we call it as an ampersand. Okay, so this, you can use the ampersand operator, and it basically represents Boolean AND logic. Okay, so when you say A set and B set, you get the common element, or you get the intersection, which is the value 33 here. If I don't want to use this, I can also use A set dot intersection with B set, and it also gives me the intersection value. Okay, let me go ahead. Further, if I want difference, okay, so when I say I want difference, I'm going for this operation. Let's say I want to say from A set, remove everything from B set. So I'm interested within this area. What I can do is I can take A set and subtract B set from it. So when you say A set subtracted by B set, you will get the answer 11 and 12, because that is the only thing that is left. Okay. To do that, instead of using the operator, the function would mean A set dot difference of B set, and that will give us the same task here. And similarly, interestingly, if I want to find the symmetric difference, so when I see the symmetric difference, basically I'm looking at this common region. Okay. If I look at this common region, how can I find this common region? I can find that using this operator. Okay, so this is called the hat operator, or if you use in C, this is called as the Boolean XOR operator. Okay, it's called the Boolean XOR operator. What the XOR item does, it gives us what is the uncommon elements between the two sets. Okay, what is the uncommon elements? So intersection gives you the common element, and XOR, or this operator, symmetric difference, gives you the uncommon element. So basically, if I look at A and B, it gives me the values of this region that belongs only to A and that belongs only to B. So 11, 22, 12, and 23. Okay. These are the items we'll get as the answer of XOR. If I don't want to use this operator, I can also use A set dot symmetric underscore difference as the operator. Okay. Can you tell me an interesting way of finding out symmetric difference without using XOR or without using the symmetric difference function? How can I get the symmetric difference without using these two ideas? Okay. Can you try attempting solving this problem? How can I find this area, that is the symmetric difference, without using the XOR operator or without using the symmetric difference function? Excellent. So someone has answered union minus intersection. That's the right answer. So how I can find it? I can do something like this. I can say A set union, union is OR, A set and B set. And from this I subtract intersection, that is A set and B set. Okay. So by doing this, by doing the union minus the intersection, we can get the symmetric difference. Okay. Excellent. Let me go ahead. So the next data type that we look for, and is the last data type that we'll be looking at, is the dictionary. The dictionary is basically like an address book. So address book, you have name, you have the contact name, and associated with the contact name, you have other details. Okay, so just like you would save someone's contact in your mobile phone, so you would search in contacts the name of the person, and when you click on the name of the person, you can see you have stored other things. You can see the phone number. You may even have an image of the person. You may even have the email address of that person. Okay, and that is what the concept of dictionary also looks like, where we have an address book. We have something called as key, or something that will be the name using which you will search things, and we have values. That is the details that we'll be searching. Okay, so let me show you certain examples of that. Also, let me also say that dictionaries should have unique keys. That is, you cannot have multiple keys. You cannot have copies of multiple keys which look exactly same. It should be unique. Dictionaries are immutable objects. Sorry, your key should only be immutable objects like strings. You cannot use mutable objects as keys, which basically means that our keys should be simple objects. Okay, all of this is boring. Let me come back to examples that makes more sense on this. Okay, the way that we will use a dictionary is we will do it this way. Like say D is the dictionary that you want to create. You will open a curly brace, you will close a curly brace, and within curly brace you will have elements of this type. Each element should have a key part and a value part, and the key and value will be separated using a colon. Okay, so this looks very similar to sets. You see, even in sets we open and close curly braces to define the sets, but the additional difference here within a dictionary is each element has a key value structure which is separated by a colon. Okay, so let's look at how to create a dictionary. We can create a dictionary by just simply writing this command. Okay, so write D1 and then open and close with nothing inside, creates an empty dictionary. Okay, similarly, if I want to create an empty dictionary, I can also write dict of this one. Okay, that also creates an empty dictionary. So at this point, I have an interesting question for you. How do I create an empty set? If dictionary and set both look like this, how can I create an empty set? Okay, excellent. That's right, Raghav. To create an empty set, we use the set function. There is no way of creating an empty set using just the brackets. Okay. To create dictionary, we can create like this and this way. Let's say to add items into the dictionary. Here we are adding two items here. This is element 1, this is element 2. Element 1 has the key A. A is a string which acts as the key, and 3 is the value associated with that key. Here B is the string that acts as our key, and 4 is the value associated with that key. Okay. So when you write D1 is equal to this dictionary, when you print D1, you can see that the value of D1 gets printed here, which is actually key value pairs. And when you look at the type of D1, you can see the type of D1 is a dict. Instead of this, if you create something like this, if I just create 3 within curly braces, this actually creates a set. It does not create a dictionary. So the key item is dictionaries should have colons here. Okay, that is how you will be able to create dictionaries. We can also create dictionaries by passing inputs to the dict function. Okay, to this dict function, if you pass inputs, you can create dictionary. So in this case, can you tell me what is the input that we are passing to the dict function, or what is the data type of the input that we are passing to the dict function? Okay, excellent. We are passing a list to the dict function, and we can know we are passing a list by seeing that we have an open and closed square brackets. And this is a special list. This list has its elements as tuples. So there are two tuples elements as the elements of this list, and each of these tuple element has two values. The first value will be interpreted as a key. The second value will be interpreted as a value. Okay. So A becomes the key, 3 becomes the value, B becomes the key, 5 becomes the value. Another way is I can have a list of lists here. Okay. So I have a list as input. This list has two elements as input. Both of these elements are lists in which the first one becomes the key, second one becomes the value. Okay. Okay, someone is asking, is it valid that we start with in curly brace, have 3, have colon, end here? No, this is not valid. Python will not understand this. It will throw out an error because you have two different kinds of brackets. Let me go ahead. Dictionary basic methods. Okay, so what interesting things can we do with the dictionary? So let's look at here. We start with a dictionary D, which has two key value pairs, one A, two B, and now I'm doing something like this. I'm adding a new value by writing D of 5 is equal to G. So what this does is takes 5 as the new key and G as the new value, and it updates the dictionary. So now we already had two elements. We have a third element in which the key is 5 and the value is G. That is how we can add elements into the dictionary. Okay. We can also update elements of a dictionary using the same idea. When I say D1, D of 1 is equal to G, we know that there is already a character here. There is already an element here with the key 1. When we do this, it updates its value from A to G. Okay, so that is how we can update these values. We can have only unique keys. Okay, so here if I try to have two elements, both having the same key 1 and 1 with values A and B, Python does not accept it. Python takes the latest key as the right one. Okay, so you can only have unique keys within Python. Additionally, our keys have to be mutable. Okay, our keys have to be immutable. So look at here. Here the keys are 1 and 2. So 1 and 2 numbers are immutable. So this works well. We have two values here. So both of these keys are strings. So they work well because strings are immutable. We have two things here. One here, the first key is a tuple. The next is a number. So tuples are also immutable. So this also works out well. Now we are trying to keep the key as a list. Okay, our key is a list, and this gives us an error. It says that this is unhashable type list. Okay, in fact, what it basically means is that this key is a mutable object. So we cannot use mutable objects as keys. We only can keep immutable object as keys. Okay. Additionally, I would like to add one more note. Normally, this and this is something that we will not use. Okay. For dictionaries, we want our dictionary keys to be simple like either numbers or string names. Okay, but not an object, not a collection of items. That generally does not make sense. And in so many years of experience, I have never seen anyone use dictionaries with keys like complex items like this. Okay. Let's go ahead. There are certain basic dictionary methods that we can use, like length and delete. So length, as you can guess, gives us the length of the dictionary. So in this case, there are two elements here. When we say len of D, it gives us the value 2, basically saying that there are two elements in this list. If I want to delete a particular item, so let's say I want to delete this part, I can write delete del D1. So that deletes this entire key value pair, and this goes out, and we are left with only this one item in the dictionary, 2 and D. Further, if you want to delete the entire dictionary, you can write delete D, and you can delete the entire dictionary. Now when we write D, it gives us a name error saying that the name D is not defined, okay, because we have deleted D already. Going ahead, we can do other operations. So here I have a dictionary with 1A, 2B, and I want to run it through a loop, okay. So when I write for I in D and I print I, can you tell me what does I take? Does I take the value of the key, or does I take values? So I represent keys or values. Okay, right. Keys is the right answer. You see, in both these cases, 1 and 2, these are keys. When you just write for I in D, you get the keys. Okay. We can also access the keys by using D.keys. So D is the name of our dictionary. When you do a dot keys, you can see what are the keys available for the dictionary. So here we have 1 and 2. And if we write this as our input here, that is for I in D.keys, you get the value 1 and 2. Okay. So here also we can see it gets the keys. So tell me maybe a very small interesting question. If I want to loop through the keys, and I have two ways of doing it. I have this way 1 and this way 2. Which way is better? Should I use this way to iterate through the keys? So this is method 1. Or should I use method 2 to iterate through the keys? Okay, we should use method 2. And let me give you the logic for that. The logic is very simple. Your program should be readable. Okay, so this is not as readable, or it leaves to the imagination of the reader to understand or to explain what this part will do. Whereas this makes it very specific that you're iterating through the keys of the element. So all of you are right. This should be the preferred method if you want to iterate through keys. You would not use this. Sometimes we would not want to iterate through keys, but we would want to iterate through the values. Okay. In those cases, what we can do is we can access the values of a dictionary by doing D.values. And that gives us dict values, which is basically the, just 1 second. Okay, so D.values gives us access to the values of the elements. So when I say for I in D.values print I, it prints both these values A and B. Okay. Additionally, sometimes we are interested in accessing both. Okay, I want the key also and the value also. In those cases, we can use something like D.items. Okay, so D.items gives us this as our output. So what is this? This is basically a list of tuples, and the tuples has the first value as key and first item as key and second item as value. And this is very interesting. Why? Because list of tuples, we can use that into a for loop while unpacking it. So when I write something like this, for I comma j in D.items, D.items represents a list of tuples. So I and j will take values directly from these tuples. So the value of key will go into I, and the value and the item value will go into j. So when you print ij, you can access both the key and values within one loop. Okay, so instead of doing something like having a normal variable as count and then going through that, it is better to do something like this tuple unpacking to be able to access both keys and values even in one loop. Okay, let's go ahead to just demonstrate again the idea of shallow copy and deep copy. I hope you remember these ideas from the list for the list example. Let's look here for the dictionary example. We are creating a dictionary with values 1A to B. I make a copy of it in D1. So D1 is equal to D. So that sees, if we now print D1, we can see that D1 also has the same values. If I update D1, if I update D1 of 1 as C, that is, I update this value of, instead of this value of A, I update that value as C. What happens is D1 gets updated. Additionally, as expected, D also gets updated. Why? Because a shallow copy. Shallow copy means they are sharing the same memory element. By sharing the same memory element, as you update the value of D1, the value of D also gets updated. In contrast to that, if we have something called as a deep copy, this will not happen. So let's say we start with the same example D. Now to make a copy, instead of just writing d1 is equal to d, we write d1 is equal to d dot copy. Okay. So when you write d1 is equal to d dot copy, what happens? What happens is when you update the value of d1 as c, here d does not get changed and d remains the same. Okay. So that's the idea between shallow copy and deep copy. Deep copy has a different memory address or a different memory location, thereby changing one value does not affect the other value and both remain both remain separate. We have additional functions that are interesting for using dictionaries. We have the get function and we have the update function. Okay, the get function can help us to extract items from this list. Okay, so when you write d1 d dot get 1, you can extract the value a here. Okay, when you say d dot get 5, we can see that the 5 element does not exist here, and since it does not exist, it gives us the answer none. Okay, and when we say d dot get 5 comma no key, basically what it means is when this item does not exist. Okay, when this item does not exist and we still want to remove it out, it will return no key instead. So when the item does not exist, instead of getting none, it gives us the default value that we want to set. That's the default value. Okay, someone is asking the question, keys must be unique, then what about values? So there is no condition on values. Values, you can have copies, duplicates of values, and it will not make any difference. The only criteria is keys should be unique. Okay, so let's say even like your contacts, if you want to have two different names with the same number, you can store it, right? So I can store a name like Sonu with the number 1, 2, 3, 4, and the same name Sonu as the number 5, 6, 7, 8, and that works out fine. Okay, or no, a different name with the same number, and that also works out fine. Okay, so basically there is no criteria on values. You can have any kind of value. Just the criteria is keys should be unique. So I explained the get function. Can you tell me if I want to access this element A? I see that this is one method. If I can use d.get1 and that will help me to access the element A. Is there any other method in which we can access the element A here? Okay. No, no. So far, we don't have the right answer. Okay, I'll repeat the question. I said to access the element A here, that is for the key 1, the value A, to access this value, we are using the get function. So you say d.get1 gives us this part. Is there any other way where we can access this value? Okay, so yes, Manasa is right. You see, someone also answered earlier similar, but it was wrong. You have to write D, and within square brackets, you have to write the value 1. Okay, within square brackets. If you write D and within curly brackets, if you write 1, this is wrong. It will show you an error. What it basically says is it will say that D is not a function. Okay, because only functions have these open close parentheses. Now we want to access dictionary item. You have to write D, and within square brackets, you have to write 1. We'll be able to access this. So if this is the way we can access the elements of the dictionary using this, why do we need the get function? Okay, and the reason we need the get function is here. If I try to access D of 5, okay, it will throw us an error. It will say that 5 does not exist, and thus I have an error. So sometimes. Okay. Sometimes we would want to access the elements of the dictionary without knowing if that item already exists or not. Okay. So if you want to access something from a dictionary and you are not sure if the item exists or not, but you don't want an error, in that case we can use the get function. So it gives us a value none, but none is not an error, right? So sometimes when you have big loops, it is difficult to see which items are present or not. In those cases, we can use the get function. Additionally, the get function has an extra functionality where if the item does not exist, I can return a default value. Okay, so if I return something like this, it is more useful rather than getting an error. So that's the use of having the get function. Let's look at the update function. The update function can help us to add items into a dictionary using another dictionary. Okay, so let's look at here. D1 is an example where I have dictionary with two elements, 1 and 2, with values A and B. D2 is another dictionary with keys 100 and 200 with values C and D. If I want to combine these two together, I can use the update function by doing something like this. D1.update D2. And what this will do, now when I print D1, I can see that it has 4 values. The original 1, 2. Additional, we have the 100 and 200 as well. So D1.update D2 will help us to add or combine both the dictionary elements together. We also see that D2 does not get updated. D2 remains the same, but only D1 gets updated. Okay. How do we remove items from a dictionary? We can use the pop method. So here, let's say we have 1A to B. If I want to pop this element out, I can say D.pop1, which basically means that I want to remove this element from here. And this removed element goes into this variable K. So the value of 1, which is the value for the key 1, which is A, gets into the variable K here. And now when you print D, you can see that it has only this item. It does not have this item. Okay, so now we have 2:B. We could also pop something that does not exist inside the dictionary. So if you want to pop 5, normally you would not be able to do that. It will say that it's you an error. But with pop function, that is not the case. With the pop function, you can give a default value. So when you say D.pop5, this default value will be popped to the variable K, and the original variable D does not change. It remains the same. Okay. Okay, this is also interesting. Just like list comprehension, we have something called as dictionary comprehension, which basically means that I can write a shorthand for loop that returns to us a dictionary. Okay. So how do we use this? We use this by giving open and close curly brackets, which basically says that whatever we will return will come into a dictionary kind of structure. And for this dictionary kind of structure, we are returning items of this type. What is the type? I have a key, colon, I have a value. Okay. What is the key? So key will take the values from this part of the code, and value will also take part from this part of the code. What is this part? We are saying for y in range 5. Okay, so range 5 means it will take the values from 0 to 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So y will take these 4 values, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and for these 4 values, it will return objects, or it will return name and value pairs of this type. Okay, so you'll have 0 and 2 times 0. 1 and 2 times 1, 2 and 4, 3 and 6, 4 and 8, so on. Okay, so this is the kind of items that you will get. So this is dictionary comprehension, which is very similar to list comprehension. So someone's saying, can you share the syllabus? I have already shared the syllabus. I think you have to contact your host to see how you can get access to it. Okay. Also, I think I shared informally in the past video, I have shared what I'm going to be teaching. And again, you'll have to ask your host how to access older videos to be able to see what the material is. Okay. Let me go ahead. We can also have something like this, update elements in a nested data type. Okay. So in this example, okay, let me ask you some quick questions. Okay, so to answer you shortly, that is not only Python. This is a data science course. Python is only our starting point. From Python, we would want to go to packages within Python, to supervised machine learning for classification, regression, unsupervised learning, and then finally neural networks. Okay, so that's in short the syllabus. Let's look at X here. So X is a dictionary which is having 2 elements as key of A and value of 4, 5, 6, and then the key of B and value as this guy. Okay, so can you tell me what is the data type of this value? Okay, excellent. So this is a tuple, and this tuple has three elements, 11, 22, and then this dictionary, which is the third element. And this dictionary has key of C and value of 9. Okay, so that is how we can access, or we can create a nested kind of data type with X. Now let's say we want to update, okay, we want to update this value 5 with the value 55. The way we will do that is we will say, let us go to the first value here. To access the first value, we can write X of A. So that is the key here, which helps us to access this first value. And within this first value, we have 0, 1, and 2. If I want to update this, I can say with square brackets, put 1. That gives me access to this variable. And when I write that equal to 55, this gets updated so that we can get this 5 gets updated to this value 55. Okay. Similarly, if I want to update this value of 9 to 99, I would have to do something like this. So when I say X of B, that gives me access to this tuple. And within this tuple, I am saying, get me access to the second element, that is 0, 1, and 2. And for this second element, we are saying, let me get access to this dictionary C. And for this C, we are updating its value to 99. Okay, so this 9 can get updated to 99 this way. Okay, can you tell me, okay, how can we access this variable 6? If I want to change this value 6 to the value 66, what kind of code we have to write? Okay, XA2 is equal to 66. Okay, you're right. Okay, to access this, we have to write a code something like this. We have to write XA2 is equal to 66, and thereby we will be able to update the value of 6 to 66. Excellent. Okay, so with this, I end the topic on data types. Since we have time remaining, let us also go ahead with the next part, where I'll be discussing functions within Python. Okay, and at least we will try to complete some parts so that in the next class we can continue from there. Okay, let's go ahead. So for functions in Python, these are the topics that I wish to teach. What are function parameters? What are default argument values? Keyword arguments, variable argument parameters, return statement, local variables, global statement, 3 short function methods, lambda, map, and filter, and finally, what are docstrings? Okay, let's go ahead. Let me skip this part, or let me, in short, explain what this part is. Functions are basically reusable pieces of program. Okay, so generally we write a function when we want to reuse, or we think there is an opportunity to reuse a certain block of code, and those things we generally would want to add into a function. Okay. Additionally, if there is something that we want to use again and again and again, rather than writing all of the code multiple number of times, we would want to access those using functions. Okay. Going ahead, functions also allow us something called as abstraction. Okay. Functions allow us a concept called as abstraction, which basically means that we are separating the usage from the definition. Okay, so what does that mean? So what that means is, I want to create a black box, and I may not know how this black box is functioning, but I can know what input I'm giving and what output I'm getting out. Okay, so let's say if I write a function for giving the square of an item, I enter the value 2 and I get the answer as 4. I enter the value 3, I get the answer as 9. Okay, I may not know what is the code written inside, but even without understanding the code that is written inside, I am able to use the function well. Okay, so this idea also comes very handy. So this is not just, abstraction is not just in programming, we use it all the time. Okay, so I am sure many of us here will know how to ride a bike or a scooty or a car, and we know how the accelerator works, we know how the steering works and how the gear system works, but very few of us would actually know how an engine works. Okay, what is the operation of a 2T engine, or what is the operation of our drum brakes or cylinder brakes, or how does the energy from your fuel gets transferred into the movement that you get of your vehicle. Okay, even without understanding those concepts, we are able to ride our vehicle well. Okay, so that's the idea of that's the idea of abstraction. Okay, which is without basically understanding the concept inside, without understanding how it works, we can pass inputs and get outputs back. Okay. Okay. So many of you guys are writing answers, and that's right. That's right. Okay. I just approve that. Let's go ahead. So let me also see. We have used the function range before, right? Within our learning, we have used the function range, which we understand takes different inputs and gives certain outputs. Now, we may not know what is the internal working of that range, how it is able to work so that we get the answer. But I know that when I enter range 5, it will give me an answer of 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. Even without understanding how the internals are working, I'm able to use it well. We have also used the print function. So when I write print of, let's say, a plus b is equal to 5, this gives me the print, but without understanding how the print function works, we are still able to use it. Okay, so the idea of abstraction is very common and it is very interesting. The reason it is interesting is you can share parts of your code with other people without boring them with the complexity of your code. Your code becomes very simple to use, but it is very useful as well. It does the same task as before by hiding all the complexity inside a wrapper like the function. Okay. So we'll see how to write functions. So someone is asking, how do you access previous classes? As I said, you would have to contact your host. Okay, they would help you in finding out how to access previous content. Okay. So functions. Let's see how to create functions within Python. Okay. To create functions within Python, we use this kind of a syntax. Okay. Here we are creating a function called as f1. We start with the keyword def. Okay. Completion. Okay, I don't understand what is completion. Let me go ahead. We can write the keyword def definition, and we write the name of the function def f1. So this will be the function name, and we write open and close parentheses. Okay, writing open and close parentheses and a colon. So def definition, f1 the name of the function, open close parentheses, colon, and everything that you write after this point, which has a tab, okay, which has some space from the initial point, will be part of the function. Okay, so here we are creating a function called as f1. This is the way to create it. Within this function, we are writing two statements: print hello and print this is my first program. Okay, so a very simple function. Now this is the way of creating that function. How do we use the function? To use the function, you can simply write the name of the function with the parentheses. So f1, f1, f1 here. We'll call this function 3 times. Each time this function is called, it will print 2 lines, hello and this is my first program. Okay, which is what we get here. Hello, this is my first program once, twice, and third time. Okay, that's how we can write, we can define a function. Now, along with this, if I want to give some inputs to my function, that will go inside these parentheses. Okay, so we will look at those examples later on. For now, this is how we can create a function that does not take any input. Okay, so this is the criteria. Let us look at this part where we are calling the function f1 with 5 number of times. Okay, so for I in range 5, we write f1. Okay, so this will run the program 5 times. Each time this program runs, we say, hello, this is the first program, hello, this is the first program. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So 5 times you can get this print. Okay. Let's see a simple question. So this is the question. Create 2 functions, f1 and f2, which will be called when we have even and odd numbers from given range function. Okay, so we have a given range function. So we have a for loop that goes through a given range function. And when the value of this range is even, we will call the function f1, and the value is odd, we will call the function f2. Okay. So this is the idea. Now, had this been a normal class, I would have asked you to write this function. Sadly, I think it will be difficult for you to write this in the chat box. I will try to solve this here and tell you how this will work. Okay. So we are writing a loop in which range will take even and odd values. When it takes an even value, we'll call f1. When it takes an odd value, we'll call it f2. Or maybe I can write part of the code, and part of the code I can ask you. So for example, I write this. For I in range 10, if I modulus 2 is equal to 0, I call f1. If it is odd, I call f2. Okay. Can you tell me what code will come here to recognize if this condition is odd? Okay. What code should we write here to see that this number is odd? Okay, excellent. So I modulus 2 is equal to 1. Okay. So when we write I modulus equal to 1, and as people are writing not equal to 0 will also work out fine. But not equal to 0, you'll have to write it this way. I modulus 2 not equal to 0. Okay. Either of those conditions will work out. And that is how we can write this program. That is when the range value takes an even number, we call f1. When it takes an odd number, we call f2. Okay. Let me go ahead. Let's talk about function parameters. So function parameters are basically inputs that we can provide to our model, and our model can do something with it and give us the answer. Okay. So let's see here. Let me do this. Here we are passing two inputs to the model. So the name of the function is printmax. Def is the keyword we add to write the function. Printmax is the name of the function. We pass two inputs, A and B. And depending upon the condition inside, we will print different things. Okay. So if we are writing this program, if A is greater than B, print A is maximum. If A is equal to B, so else if A is equal to B, we write A is equal to B. And otherwise we write B is maximum. So those are the only three things that can happen. Okay. So we are writing the function printmax. Now we can call this function by directly passing literals. So here we are passing two inputs, 3 and 4. The value 3 will go to the variable A. The value 4 will go to the variable B. Okay. And when you write printmax 3 and 4, 1, 2, and 3, this condition will be held true. Why? Oh, sorry, this condition will come because A is not greater than B, that is 3 is not greater than B, so this is false. 3 is not equal to B, so this is false. The only criteria that can go is this part, which writes B is maximum. Hence we get the print here, 4 is maximum. We can also call this function printmax by passing variables as arguments. Okay, so here we have two variables, x and y. X has the value 5 and x has the value 5 and y has the value 7. And these two variables we are trying to pass as inputs to this function. Okay, so here when we pass 5 and 7, again this criteria holds true and we say 7 is maximum. Now when we look at these arguments that we can pass to the function, there are 4 kinds of things that can happen with these arguments. We have something called as required arguments, keyword arguments, default arguments, and variable length arguments. So these are very Pythonic ways of getting things done. Okay, Python helps us to do these things. Let's see what is the logic here. So required arguments are basically, if you do not put that argument, you will get an error. Okay, while defining the argument, if you're not calling as many number of arguments, your program will throw you an error. Let's look at 2 examples. So one example, very simple. We're creating a function f1, which takes one argument x, and there's just one statement inside which says print the value of x is x. We write n is equal to input, enter the value of argument. So the user puts the value 10. This value 10 goes into the variable n. And when we write f1n, we get the answer, the value of x is 10. So everything is simple, everything is right. Let's go ahead. So Python is case sensitive? Yes, Python is case sensitive. Here we have a function. Okay, here we have a function f2. F2, we are taking two inputs, x and y. And here we are printing the value of x comma y is x comma y. We take the variable n, saying input, enter the value of argument. So we take one input n, and when we pass it to f2, like n, we see it gives us an error. The error is f2 missing one required positional argument y. So n will go to the value x, but for y we are not putting anything. Since we are not putting anything, it gives us an error. What is case sensitive? Case sensitive is just knowing the difference between capitals and smalls. So if I have, let's say if I have a variable a, b, okay, let me have a variable a who has a value 5. And if I have a variable a with the value 6, these are two different variables in Python. Okay, so this is separate from this. They are not the same. That's just the difference between what case sensitive is. And as I answered earlier, Python is case sensitive. So when you put small letter a, that is different from the capital letter a. Okay. Let's go ahead. Keyword arguments, or maybe let us start keyword arguments in the next class. We will not be able to finish keyword arguments in the next 2 minutes. Okay. I hope this lecture was informative. I hope that you learned something. We are going very slow so that this becomes more accessible to more people. Otherwise, generally this is, if you're coming from a programming background, all of these ideas are very, very simple. We can finish them in an hour session, but we are going slow. Nonetheless, we will reach our data science soon. I think once we finish our functions and modules, we will look at packages that will be useful for data science. Something like NumPy, Pandas, Matplotlib, Seaborn, and so on. Is there a class tomorrow or day after tomorrow? I think you'll have to ask your host. I am also not sure at this point. I will ask my employer and see if we have a class tomorrow. Neecha, can you confirm that? Okay, maybe I'll ask my employer himself. Okay, so with this, I'll end for today. Let me stop sharing. Thank you so much for attending. I will exit now. Okay. Neecha, are you here?
Thank you. Yes,
okay.
sir.
Yes. Yes. Okay. See you later. Do we have a class tomorrow?
No, sir. We'll meet on Monday, sir.
We meet on Monday, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. That answers the question. Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
So Monday next class untadandi. In advance, happy Ganesh Chaturthi to all. మీకు రికార్డెడ్ సెషన్స్ అయితే ప్రెజెంట్ ఇవ్వడానికి లేదండి, ఆ యాక్సెస్ లేదు. సో ఎండ్ ఆఫ్ ద కోర్స్ మీకు ప్రొవైడ్ చేస్తాము. మెటీరియల్ కూడా ఎప్పుడైతే ఈలన్ వాళ్ళు సెండ్ చేస్తారో నేను వెంటనే మీకు సెండ్ చేసేస్తానండి.